ملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. صدق الله مولانا العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Last class we had talked about a lesson of rules of Allah. Can any one of you explain to me what the rule was? What do you remember from the rule? Anything about it?
You're preparing for number 5. If Rob is talking, you're consuming letters, it's temporary, so the letter Rob is pronounced heavy.
It's pronounced heavy. So what did you understand about temporary kasra? Or temporary hamza, right? Hamza al-wasl or kasra al-'arida. So temporary kasra. What did you recognize? What did you understand about that? What is that condition? Do you know how would it appear in the Quran? If you were to see it, what does it look like? And does it change because of the condition?
Well, I don't know if you see a
Sure.
word that starts with an alif, look at the third letter.
Yes.
And if the third letter has a fatha or a kasra, you put a kasra on the alif. And then if the third letter has a dhamma, then put a dhamma on the alif.
Very good. And so what will that do? That will give that letter a
Haraka.
haraka. Right. So that will make it mutaharrik. Right? So that's good. Very good. So that means what? It means that the alif does not have a haraka necessarily to begin with. You are giving it a haraka, and so therefore it's temporary. It's not constant. It's not something that's there, set in stone, that you have to recite it with the haraka for your recitation. There are different situations that either you can recite it with a haraka or without a haraka. And the condition here is that if you were to recite that word initially as your first word in your recitation, then you would add the haraka, right? But it would not necessarily be the case if you were actually continuing from the previous word or the previous words. Like for instance, if it's in the middle of an ayah, you wouldn't necessarily find it to have a haraka, right? That's why it's temporary, because it's not necessarily meant to be there. It's only there just because it has a place in the meaning of the recitation of the Quran, and in your recitation, if you were to recite it by itself or starting from that, whether if it's in the beginning of an ayah or if you break your breath and you want to repeat from the middle of the ayah again, then you have to start off from that word. And if that's the case, that's when you give it that haraka, correct? Right? So that's why it's temporary. And when that specific condition occurs, when in that circumstance, when you see that very unique alif and hamza, right? We'll say alif / hamza because it's an alif as well as a mutaharrik letter. That is when you see the ra right after it. That's when you have to recite the ra thick. And even though it might have a kasra before it in the previous word, just because of that unique characteristic and the association of that specific alif, you will recite the ra thick. That is the rule, and that is what we covered last time. This time, inshallah, it is a rule of ra, but it will be covering a different aspect of the rule of ra. It's going to be covering a section. Have you done the sifat? I did sifat? Yeah.
We have done
Yeah, the
this.
verse of sifat?
Yeah.
So if you cover sifat, then you want to remember something, a term that's known as Musna'iyya and Mutlaqa. These are sifat. They are specific attributes of the letter, any letter, specific letters, and those specific attributes will cause you to make a change in the letter, the pronunciation of the letter wrong. So this is that specific exception to the rule. the exception is that if ra is sakin, and the preceding letter, there's a kasra. Right there and then, just by looking at that first line, can you tell me how much was said the line? Did you say what? So, Maya, you're saying something about it? You were saying?
I'm sorry.
By looking at the first line, the top line, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean? How would you recite the letter ra? If the ra is sakin?
If the ra is sakin, you look at the preceding letter.
Right. And if it has a kasra, how would you recite a regular ra?
Soft.
Soft.
Yes.
But here, this is an exception. So if the following letter in the same word, this is a very unique exception. Last week's exception was the hamzatul wasl, the kasratul arida. This week, the exception to the rule is that if in the same word comes a musta'aniya letter, a musta'aniya sound letter, so as musta'aniya is elevated or mutbaqa is closed or rounded sifat, rounded attributes, the ra is pronounced heavy or thick. So this is the exception here. That the exception is that normally, if the ra is sakin preceded by a kasra, you will recite the ra sakin thin. And therefore, it will never, that's how it will be recited. But because of the association of a musta'aniya or mutbaqa letter in the same word, right after, not few letters after, but right after the letter ra, then you will recite the ra thick and heavy. That is the exception. So here are the musta'aniya letters, as listed for you here. They are, you can either connect them together to recognize them as this collection of letters. Either it's this, or you can recognize that as the specific letters, you can memorize it that way. However you memorize it, these are the letters that have this sifat, this elevated recitation. Kha, sa, ba, gha, ba, qa, ba. This musta'an is elevated sound that comes with these letters. If you ever have them in the same word as the letter ra, and they come right after, it has to be right after the letter ra, then you will recite this letter ra thick. And here are the other sifat. We said musta'aniya or mutbaqa. So it doesn't have to be the same thing, but even then, mutbaqa is actually derived from musta'aniya. Musta'aniya is one sifat, and mutbaqa is another. So this, if you want to think about it less complex or less complicated, then you can just think about these musta'aniya letters, and from these musta'aniya letters, also if you ever see sad, bad, ba, or la. So these four. So if you can just memorize these musta'aniya letters, then you'll be fine, inshallah, because they are also these sifat, these attributed letters are also in the same list. But the difference here is that the sifat is different. It's the same letter. So don't less complication. Recognize these letters, memorize these, then inshallah you should be fine for the sake of your recitation. Here's an example. In reality, or in the normal conditions, qaf has a kasra, so therefore it will be recited thin. Because there's a ra sakin before that is a kasra. But here's some very unique attributes here. There is qaf, this letter is connected directly with the ra. This is coming right before it. And there is another letter that's actually coming right after it. And these both have unique sifat that are associated with this exception. So therefore, you will recite this word thick. Qil, not qil, not qil, qil, ra is very thick. Qil, qasim, qil, qasim, qil, qasim. Milk, sad, milk, ra is very thick. Milk, sad, exception takes place, and therefore it is recited
Having.
thick. Any questions so far? Here's another one. Feed off. Feed off. So if you notice here, this fa over here has a kasra underneath it. So therefore, it's supposed to be recited thin. But it's not recited thin. Why? Because of the fact that this off is coming right after it. So pay attention. He has highlighted for you the first letter and the letter right after the law. The rule is if there is a musta'abiyah or multiple letter, right, that's associated with the ra right after it, you'll be reciting it thick. Here it just so happened that both of them in this word are musta'ab and mutlaqa. There's multiple letter there, Paul, and musta'ab, they're both from the musta'ab sifat as well. You know that sifat, there are certain multiple different sifat that each letter can have, correct?
Yes.
Right? You learned this rule that there are multiple different sifat that each letter can have. So that's why you see these letters are repeated here. Even though they're in this list here, they're also listed in this list here. Because there are different attributes of every letter. And so one of the attributes of these letters that's elevated, it's recited with an elevated sound, and closed, rounded, swall, the lips, and the way that actually the mouth, the cheeks form a thick and a rounded, closed, a round sound, swall, ball, that's those sifat. So it just so happened that in this example, both of them are part of the exception, but that's not what's going to happen here. This letter here is just showing you, it's highlighting here to show you that there's a kasra underneath it. So in reality, or if you were just to look at these two letters, you would think that there's this ra to be recited thin. But just because of the impact of this next letter here, which is musta'aniya letter and mutlaqa, you will recite this letter, you recite this ra thick. Same idea from here and here as well. That this letter here has a kasra. So therefore, it could have been recited thin, but just because of the qaf that's coming right after it, therefore this ra sound is transformed, it is changed, it is manipulated, it's deviated from the norm, and therefore you will be reciting it thick, just because of the impact of this letter here. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if I mentioned this to you before about suhbah. Did I mention that to you before, suhbah? It's really amazing. I know my father might have explained it to you before in the previous class that I have mentioned it as well. But this is very unique because the Quran has it's an infinite amount of knowledge for different levels and different people to extract from it very important lessons, life lessons. And it's amazing how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the designer, the perfect designer, has designed every letter to impact and to have a very unique meaning for every single one of us, and for us to understand how to live our lives. If you realize that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam has mentioned to us the impact of suhbah, of having a proper companionship, and how companionship in general impacts the person, you'll realize the same idea. Like there are many places in the Quran you'll realize that there are many different things. But if you were to look at this in the perspective of life, and you realize how that letter ra, having its own attributes, and being in its own, having its own identity, can change. How? Just by the presence of one letter. The association of one letter can impact its core identity. That if it is actually known as a ra to have a thin sound or a thick sound, it is changed just by being associated and being in the company of some specific letters. So if you are in the good company, then you'll realize that the company will impact your heart and it will change you. The same way, if you're in bad company, the heart will be impacted by that company and it will change you. So this is a very, very amazing idea, and I always get really I'm amazed every single time I just realize this, that it's not talking about anything specific good or evil here. It's just trying to help you help you realize the impact of suhbah. That if you have proper suhbah, then you'll realize that no matter what, it will impact your heart. You want to make sure that you are in the company of good people all the time, so that your heart is always impacted in the right way, and that you will always elevate your status by making sure that you are purifying your heart and constantly being closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is a very unique and very amazing attribute, and how that we realize this from the letters themselves, not even the words. We're not talking about the Quranic meaning here of tafsir. We're talking about the basic letters and the sounds of these letters, and how just the sound can be impacted by the suhbah of these letters. So imagine the meaning, and imagine everything that's associated with all of these words, how they can be impacted just by being associated with something specific. So therefore, may Allah guide us and keep us protected and keep us with good suhbah always. He has his death in here for work. So this is a very unique exception as well. The letter Ra never gets connected. It never gets connected to anything on this side of the Ra, right? Right? Great question. No? The letter of Ra never gets connected to anything on this side, correct? That's just the way that the letter Ra is associated, correct? But you need to understand that these are one words. This is one word. There is
It's not a connector.
Sorry?
It's not a connecting letter.
It's not a connected letter, right? But I want you to understand that this is something that he's trying to clarify here. Father's trying to tell you that if the musta'ala or mutmaqa letter is a separate word, then the letter Ra is pronounced soft and thin. So this is also very interesting and also very important for you to understand, is that if the letter musta'ala or mutmaqa letter is in the next word, then this rule does not apply. It has to be in the same word. That's why he has written this in red. He wants us to understand that the letter Ra and the musta'ala or mutmaqa has to be in the same word in order for this Ra to be impacted and to change its sound. Does that make sense? Hopefully, inshallah. Once he gives an example here, that if it's in the next word here, it will not be impacted, and the Ra will be recited thin. The Ra will be recited like it's normally to be recited. It's only when it's in the same word that you will be reciting this differently. Here is an example here. وَلَا تُصَعِّرْ خَدَّكَ. So here, Ayn has a kasra. This Ayn has a kasra. So therefore, the Ra is recited thin. But if you look at this, you'll remember that Kha is a letter of musta'ala. Correct? Yes. But what's happening here is that it's coming in the next word. This is a different word. And therefore, this rule will not apply. So I want you to remember that, inshallah, that even though this is it's part of the same word, it's not. And the way that the Quran is written, the way that the caliphs and the writers have written it, they will make a significant spacing between the words, so it will be easy for you to understand, inshallah. But if you can understand the idea that if it's not in the same word, then you will recite it differently, then inshallah you will, as you also continue with your recitation and become familiar with the words, be able to understand the difference between where every word begins and ends. So of course, you have to recite with the teacher, so it will make it easy for you to, inshallah, understand where to stop and how to stop and how to continue. And that's why it's also very, very significant to have a teacher. But inshallah, when you understand that, also know that it's very significant for you to remember that it has to be in the same word for this letter Ra to be changed. If it's not in the same word, it will maintain the same rule, regular rule. Ra will be recited thin. So again, we're talking about exceptions to the rule. There are different rules of law. The basic rules of law, can anyone remind me? Let's talk about the halakat on the law. If the law has any halakat itself.
The raw is fatha or dhamma, or tanween and fatha, or tanween and dhamma is pronounced heavy.
So that's one. So if it has fatha or dhamma on the letter law, it's pronounced heavy. That's one fundamental standard rule of law. That's good. Anybody else from over here? Anything? Any remember any rules?
Says a socket in the pursuing of the fatha or dhamma. Again, it's pronounced
Heavy. That's a very fundamental and standard rule. Those are two very standard rules. Very good. How about if a law itself contains a qasra? If it has a qasra underneath it?
Soft.
That is would be soft.
Soft. This is a fundamental standard rule of law. Anything else? We talked about fatha or dhamma, fathatain or dhammatain. On the letter of law, you will recite that letter of law thick. We also covered that if there is a kasra underneath the letter of law, you'll recite that letter of law thin, soft, exactly. So those are fundamental rules of the letter of law. We also know that if we look behind, if the letter of law has a sakin, we look to the previous letter. If the previous letter has a fathatain or dhammatain, like we mentioned here, we will recite the letter of law thick. This is the fundamental, very standard, official rule of law. If there is a kasra thing, or there's a kasra before the letter of law has a sakin earlier, and there's a kasra before it, the standard official rule is that you recite the letter law soft or thin. That's the standard rule. Standard rule. We're on rule number 6, okay? And these are now the exceptions to the rules. I really want you to understand the difference. I don't want you to get confused. There are multiple different rules of law. 14. There are so many different rules that are associated with the law. But I just want you, my father is trying to explain to you as the students of the Quran, how to understand this so that you can go on and teach it to others. Many people don't know these differences. Some people will look at it, some people will never even care because they were sitting in front of a teacher, the teacher corrects them, they move on. Oh, it's like this, okay, fine. So some people, they don't know, right? The person who is just reciting as a student for the teacher, they may not understand what's going on here. So therefore, they won't understand how to handle the situation. But because you are all students of the Quran, and you are at a higher level, and your expectations will be higher, inshallah ta'ala, once you finish this course, by the rest of the world, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, therefore you need to prepare yourself and equip yourself with the knowledge of not only the standards, but also the specific exceptions. Understand? So that's why these are being taught to you. If anything gets too complicated, I really wish you would write them down in your notes, and you can ask the questions later on, next week, the following week after, or if you want not to ask me, if you want to ask the father instead, however you feel comfortable, feel free to do so. But please do ask the questions, because you are now, inshallah, preparing yourselves, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will expect you, inshallah, to be teachers after you leave here, because the world is in need of people to recite the Quran properly and to teach others to recite the Quran properly as well. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not just brought you here Sundays just because you have children who go to Sunday school, or just because you have to, you have nothing else better to do. No. Because He has something special in store for all of you, every single one of you, that you will be able to make an impact. Maybe one person, maybe 5 million. It doesn't make a difference. You just need to prepare yourself with all of the knowledge that you have to have in this field so that you will be able to be proper ambassadors of the Quran, ambassadors of the recitation of the Quran. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He gives knowledge to anyone, what you do right now, even the small one slide of knowledge, any small little tidbit of information you receive, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala never gives knowledge to anyone because He wants them to store it in their brain. Never. Knowledge is always being transferred. It's always given into the vessel of a person so that it can be transferred from one place to the other. You may have a student here in the United States. You may have a person in the other continent, other end of the world, that you might meet that person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted you to teach that person, so therefore He's preparing you now, so that once you are ready to go to meet that person, you can share this knowledge with them. So you have to understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose you so that you can remember this knowledge and pass it on to somebody else who He has in mind. He has already decided where you will be transferring this on. So you are very honorable. You are very honorable because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you that honor. And He has wished for your future honor. He has wished for you that in the Day of Judgment, one student will be able to say, he was my teacher. Forgive him. He was my teacher, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I want you to forgive all of his sins or put him into Jannah. So this wasila of knowledge that's been transferred from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam all the way down to us is never for the sake of so that you can keep it in your heart and say, oh, I am a qadi, I am this and that, so it can stay in your heart or your mind and just rot. It's never meant for that purpose. Knowledge is always to be shifted, transferred from one place to the other. Always. You will always shift that knowledge from one place to the other. And the wasteful knowledge is that what you gain without needing to share it with anybody else. This here is very useful knowledge, which is knowledge that the world is thirsty for. They need it. They need this knowledge, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is preparing all of you. Some of you remember all chapters. Some of you remember maybe one slide. Some of you maybe remember nothing right now, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will remind you years later, hey, remember that one slide. You'll remember that, and you'll be able to use that as reference wherever Allah ta'ala wills. So just remember this amana, this trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is equipping you with. He doesn't want you to be embarrassed. He doesn't want you to feel scared and pressured that you have some stressful, task ahead of you. No, He's preparing you. He's preparing you so that you'll be ready, inshallah ta'ala, whenever He wills, however He wills it, to be able to pass this on to someone else. So therefore, have that in your mind whenever you come to class, that I am being honored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, please allow me to have the hidayah, to be able to not only keep it in my heart, but you be able to understand it, to practice it, so that I can teach it to others. So this is the idea behind this exception. We went over the basic rules, now we're talking about the exceptions, just so that you are aware as students of knowledge, the differences in between, the slight differences in between the rules, so that you know why it's happening. Why something is happening. So let me go back to the previous slide and remind you once more that this is only talking about words that have the musta'ya letter in the same word. And if that ever comes in the same word, then the original, standard, fundamental rule of ra being sakin and kasra before it will not apply. It won't apply. When? There is a musta'ya letter in the same word. If there is a musta'ya, I'm just trying to keep repeating it over and over again until you really understand what I'm trying to say here. That's the only thing I'm doing here. When confusing you more, let me know. Hopefully, if I'm not, then inshallah, I want to move forward. Yes, go ahead.
Can you just read it once?
Zuru. So the rule here is if ra is sakin, preceding letter bears kasra. Just by looking at that first line, you know that the fundamental rule is what?
10.
The exception here is that if that is the case, but in the same word, right after the ra sakin, there is a mutraqa or musta'ya letter. These are sifat of the letters. I've gone over the chapter before. So these are sifat, specific sifat. Musta'ya is one type, and mutraqa is another type. So if these ever come in the same word, right after the ra sakin, even if there's a kasra before it, you will say thick. You will say thick. The difference here is it has to. The only difference here is it has to be in the same word. My father has listed for you here the elevated letters, so you know them. Here they are separated. Here they are all in one. So it's helpful for you to memorize them. If you separate that and break that up, you'll find that these are all letters here. Mutraqa is another another understanding of it, because sometimes they have different sifat as well. But kha, sa, ba, ghain, ba, qaf, and wa. Pay attention to these letters. As long as you can remember these letters, you'll be fine. You'll be set. What you need to know is if they come after the ra sakin in the same word, then what's going to happen is this ra sakin is going to be recited thick. It's going to be il, qasim, mil, sad, fil, fil, Does everyone want to try these rules? I know that there'll be show examples in the future, but these are some specific places. Do you want to start from the right side as well?
Third boss.
Yeah, simple. Bill boss. So there's actually bill boss in it, but okay, go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
مرصاد.
Mil, swad. Very good. Do you want to try this one? Phil, very good.
Third boss.
Bill boss. A little thicker. Mil, swad. Very good. You know, if we front or back, this is
Feel boss.
Bill boss. Okay.
Feel
Feel even thicker. Feel.
hot.
Because if you don't make it
Feel hot.
right, exactly. You did it very well. You got it. Just want to tell you one thing that if sometimes you don't do it precisely that way, it will turn into a light sounding as well as a feel. Make sure there's no repetition because la, makhraj, it will cause that the vibration sound by itself naturally. But make sure you have a strong grasp of that letter and you don't let it vibrate. Feel,
Feel hot.
perfect.
Feel hot.
JT.
Feel boss.
Big boss, very good.
Feel hot.
Okay.
Feel hot.
Feel, thick,
Feel hot.
feel, okay. So this is an example where the letter ra is recited normally. And why we say that is because this khaddaka is a word of itself. This is the difference. He's trying to show your father that the difference here is that you will recite this letter ra thin. Why? Because this rule does not apply here. Why doesn't it apply? Simply because khaddaka is not part of this word here. Dusa'ib is one word. Khaddaka is another word. So since this letter is Khassabat al-Fid, right? It's from Musta'ali letters. But it's in the next word. That's why you will not recite this thick. There is no exception here. The exception does not apply. The exception?
No.
Does not apply. Why?
Separate words.
It's a different word. It's a completely different word. Here's another exception. And with this word, either or is allowed. In Imam Hafs, rahmatullahi alayhi recitation, these both, taqfeen or taqfeen, are allowed. In the word, in the Quran, you see filqin. That one was filqa, right? Filqin. Either you say filqin or filqin. This is a very unique, a very important tidbit of information, but just need for you to know that if you are going to teach, inshallah, to know, to help other people understand, if you ever see these words, these are some very specific words in the Quran. So if you want to write them down, please do. They're very specific. Fifth thing. This is one word that you can recite differently. Either or, it's okay. It's been recited both ways. Allah Sakit, preceded bears a kasra, preceded letter bears a kasra, following letter is a musta'ali letter. But this specific word, so if you notice that there's an exception in the exception. Subhanallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahu Akbar. There's an exception in the exception. This very specific word can be recited either or. So please do remember that. Whenever you see it in the Quran, know that you can recite it. Because off is actually part of that word. So that's why it should be, initially, if you take out the off, it's supposed to be thin. Right? Because of the kasra here. That's why this is highlighted. This is the kasra, letter bearing letter. And that's the wasa. Right? And this is not on the letter. So first of all, so then, but because of the musta'ala letter, it's recited thick. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the knowledge of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, and so the Sahaba and the Sahaba ta'alayn, and Imam Hafs has explained to us that this is one of the words that is actually recited both ways, and it's jaiz. It's allowed, permissible to recite it, either thick or thin. Do not change the meaning. So here, this is the example that my father actually put for you in the Quran. This is the example. This is the Quran ayah that is actually associated with. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Now we'll use some ayats, possibly. So if you can, you can recite. Please take off your shoes when you recite them. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فانفلق فكان كل فرق كالطود العظيم or فانفلق فكان كل فرق كالطود العظيم. Here you have the option of reciting it either thick or thin, and either way works. It's a very minute, very delicate change, but it's up to your discretion. However you'd like to recite it, you may go ahead and do so that way. Do you want to give it a shot? Do you want to try this? Does anyone want to try? You want to do it in order? You have an order, everyone put together, or individually? You want to go ahead and sit down?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فانفلق فكان كل فرق كالطود العظيم.
Right. كالطود
العظيم.
Very good. Anybody else want to give it a shot? Yes, Bismillah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فانفلق فكان كل فرق كالطود العظيم.
Perfect. MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah. Anybody else want to give it a shot? Do we want to do it in order or are we okay? Bismillah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فانفلق فكان كل فرق كالطود العظيم.
So this here is connected to here. كالطود. This lamb is not having haraka, so jump over the lamb. كالطود العظيم.
كالطود العظيم.
Perfect. Anyone else want to try?
I'll try it.
Bismillah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فانفلق فكان كل فرق كالطود العظيم.
Yes. كالطود.
كالطود.
Wow has second here. كالطود.
Wow has sakin.
It has second over
Okay.
here. It's not written, but yes, it has a lot of second.
كالطود
Therefore, it's واو فتحة طود.
كالطود العظيم.
One more time.
كالطود العظيم.
كالطود. كالطود. They now think. Yes, it's a little bit tricky because the ball and the bad
Okay.
after thick and then thin. But yes. Okay? Inshallah. Here's another exception that you can recite it. In the word ayn and qitr, letter ra is pronounced with the faim and takhfif if you're stopping at this word. There's another exception. Okay? The exception here is that if you're ever going to stop at the end of this word, then you will recite it thick or thin. So you can actually recite it different ways here. This is the only example in the Quran where this is recited this way. And this is the example here that when it's recited, stop, this is actually a stop here. It's a jaiz stop. Jaiz stop. And so therefore, if you're stopping here, this is actually how it will be recited. We recite the film or talbid. This is another example. عين القطر or عين القطر قطر 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 قطر. That's thin. قطر is also thick. وسلام عين القطر. Let me see if there's other example here. Oh, okay. And the word Mr. So there's two examples here in the slide here. So I'll go ahead and go over them and then you can get recited one after the other here. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقال الذي اشتراه من مصر ومن مصر لامرأته أكرمي مثواه عسى أن ينفعنا أو نتخذه ولدا. So these are two places where you actually, if you're going to be reciting it, this is going to be recited Tawqid or Tawqid. But it's going to stop here. This is how it's recited. So, this is where you're stopping. And so therefore, you can recite it. Don't worry about the ra having a sakin here. This is a very specific word in the Quran. Very special exception to the rule that even though ra has a sakin here, what is the rule? That if you're trying to turn it into a sakin, because of the stop, you have to look at the what? What letter to give it the halqa? If the ra is turned into a sakin because you're stopping at it. What do you look at now?
Preceding letter.
Preceding letter. The preceding letter also has a sakin. Preceding letter. The third to last letter you look at, right? Here, there's a kasra, right? So, it's supposed to be recited thin. Here, this is an example of the one place in the Quran where it can be also recited thick. And it's not going to be considered bad if you recite it thick. If you recite it thick, it will still maintain the same recitation, and that's why this exception is mentioned to you. These are specific spots with their references given to you so you can understand that even though there are exceptions, sometimes the exceptions will allow for either or, and that's jaiz. Okay? So this example here, misra, it's actually the same thing here. You recite either or. So, do we want to try that? Yes, Bismillah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقال الذي اشتراه من مصر لامرأته أكرمي مثواه وعسى أن ينفعنا أو نتخذه ولدا.
Okay. Alright, fine. Sure. So misra. Okay, fine. There are some places here, just because I know that some of the mushaf, they don't have every haraka everywhere. So therefore, you recite it that way, because for the sake of grammar, makes sense. But when the recitation of Quran happens here, you'll connect it here. وَقَالَ الَّذِي اشْتَرَاهُ مِنْ مِصْرَ لِامْرَأَتِهِ أَكْرِمِي مَثْوَاهُ عَسَىٰ أَن يَنفَعَنَا. Have you had now the rules of Nun Sakin yet?
No.
No, you haven't. Okay. And that's fine. I'm not going to say too much about that. Great, mashallah. Anyone else want to try? Yes, Bismillah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقال الذي اشتراه من مصر
Min Misra. Remember, always, whether you know the rules or not yet, just know that this tashdid always overrides the sukoon. You'll always jump past the sukoon when the tashdid comes. It gets preference. So therefore, you just jump over it. Mim. Here too. Ayyam. It's the merging of this nun sakin. You haven't learned it yet, so therefore I'm not going to hold you accountable. But just know though that this is the basic rule. If you want to understand the idea, why? We'll explain later in another chapter. But, just for the sake of understanding what's happening here, give preference to the tajdeed whenever you see them together. Whenever you see them together, always give the preference to the tajdeed, and you jump from this letter here over the second letter to the tajdeed letter. So, min misra.
وقال الذي اشتراه من مصر لامرأته أكرمي
رأته.
لامرأته
You can just like a normal letter.
لامرأته أكرمي مثواه عسى أن ينفعنا أو نتخذه ولدا.
نتخذه
ولدا.
Very good. Anybody else want to try this? Yes, Bismillah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقال الذي اشتراه من مصر لامرأته أكرمي مثواه عسى أن ينفعنا
عين really thick. عسى
أن ينفعنا
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وقال الذي اشتراه من مصر لامرأته أكرمي.
One more time from over here, Margie. من
مصر لامرأته
Yes.
لامرأته أكرمي مثواه عسى أن ينفعنا أو نتخذه ولدا.
So yeah, so لامرأته أكرمي مثواه عسى أن ينفعنا أو نتخذه ولدا. One more time. One more time.
Okay. وقال الذي اشتراه من مصر لامرأته أكرمي مثواه عسى أن ينفعنا مثواه عسى أن ينفعنا أو نتخذه ولدا.
Anybody else want to try? Oh, you want to? What's the word?
وقال الذي اشتراه من مصر
لامرأته
أكرمي مثواه عسى أن ينفعنا أو نتخذه ولدا.
Very good. It's just another here. عسى
أن ينفعنا أو نتخذه ولدا.
Have you done Madros yet?
Not yet.
You
No mud.
have- you
No.
don't have exam? So you have done a portion of it, but actually learn about different types of wudu later on. Understood? Okay. Okay, inshallah. So alhamdulillah, that was good. You want to try it?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقال الذي
Connect it. The sujoon will connect this to the previous letter here. Ladish.
وقال الذي اشترى وقال الذي اشتراه من مصر لامرأته أكرمي مثواه عسى
صاد with Sin is a lot thinner. Same makhraj, but sin is a lot thinner. Asa. Yes.
عسى أن ينفعنا أو نتخذه ولدا.
Okay, that's mashallah. Let me see what's going on there. This next row here. Okay, so this is another example he has here. So he had mentioned to you before here that this is actually two different ayat. 21 and 99. Same word here. It's time for us for class to end. Let me see here. And before we go to the next one here, if you want to try, maybe have some other recitations. Just for the sake of practice, same word. You can do misla or misla. It's okay, but different ways. You can do either or. These are two places in Surah Yusuf where this word appears, and you can recite it either or. So if you want for the sake of practice, you can have you recite this Quranic ayah. You don't want to give it a shot before, you want to try it. It's the same thing, same example. Same word, but it's different ayah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فلما دخلوا على يوسف آوى إليه أبويه وقال ادخلوا مصر إن شاء الله آمنين.
MashaAllah. You can stretch this one a little bit longer.
آوى إليه أبويه وقال ادخلوا مصر إن شاء الله آمنين.
Alhamdulillah. Okay. Alhamdulillah. Anybody else want to? Just go ahead.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فلما دخلوا على يوسف آوى إليه
No. Okay. That's mashallah. Okay. All right. Alhamdulillah. That's good. Yes, bismillah.
فلما دخلوا على يوسف آوى إليه أبويه وقال ادخلوا مصر إن شاء الله آمنين. آمين.
MashaAllah. Very good. Anyone else? Yes, Susan.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فلما دخلوا على يوسف آوى إليه أبويه وقال ادخلوا مصر إن شاء الله.
This is Mada. She's a huge Mada. This is a huge Mada. I think because of the type style, I wasn't allowed to get it, but it speaks just a lot more because the Hamza is the same word. That's why this is a very, very big. But this is actually part of the Federal rules. Insha